Good morning. Today is the 18th day of Tammuz, the 7th of July, and we're up to the 6th and 7th readings of Pinchas. And like I said yesterday, this is seems to be a little boring, and usually people don't like sitting through these readings. But it's exactly the time to note very particular details about what the Torah says, especially when you get bored. So this is what people usually do. If you get bored with something, you just have to concentrate on it in a different way. So what we're going to do today is we're first of all going to look at a very specific grammatical phenomenon. It's not even grammatical at first, it's actually in terms of the phrases used. So we're going to turn to Numbers 29, 12. And here we read about the sacrifices that are brought on Sukkot. Now Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles, is the universal holiday. It's considered the universal holiday because the entire world has just been judged on Rosh Hashanah 2 weeks before. And on Sukkot, the world is judged for rain, which in modern terms would translate into being judged for sustenance, for everything that has to do with livelihood, and so on. And this is true of the entire world, and there are very specific prophecies by Isaiah and then Ezekiel also that we read as part of the selection from the prophets after the reading of the Torah that on Sukkot, which has to do with the requirement that all nations make a pilgrimage on Sukkot to the temple. So what do we have in Sukkot? So it says here, on the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall observe a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupation. 7 days you shall observe a festival for God. You shall present a burnt offering, an offering by fire of pleasing odor to God. Now what does this include? It includes 13 oxen of the herd, 2 rams, 14 yearling lambs. They shall be without blemish. The meal offerings with them, of choice flour with oil mixed in, shall be 3/10 of a measure for each of the 13 bulls, 2/10 for each of the 2 oxen, and 1/10 for each of the 14 lambs. And there shall be 1 male of the goats for a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering, its meal offering, and libations. So basically the same formula is now going to repeat 7 times for each of the 7 days of Sukkot, except each time it's going to go from 13 oxen to 12 to 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. And this is called a concatenated triangle because its base is 13, and instead of going all the way up to 1, which would make it 91, it goes only up to 7, which makes it 70 altogether. So we have 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. That's 70. Now, because it seems the same except for the number of oxen, people get bored. So what is this even saying? But the Gaon of Vilna, who was always famous for his careful noticing of details, he tells us there is a certain phrase here that changes from day to day. And what phrase is that? At the end of the first day we said, and there shall be 1 male of the goats for a sin offering. But it doesn't say for a sin offering. For a sin offering is an explanation. But it just says, and there shall be 1 male of the goats. In the second day, it also says, and 1 male of the goats. But on the third day, it doesn't mention that it's a goat. Instead it says a little bit of a different phrase. It says, and 1 male for a sin offering. And there it says sin offering explicitly. In the 4th day, it goes back to the first phrase, 1 male of the goats. In the 5th day, it says 1 male for a sin offering. 6th day is also 1 male for a sin offering. 7th day is also 1 male for a sin offering. So we have 3 days on which the phraseology is, it's talking about the exact same sacrifice, except it's using 2 different phrases to describe it. Either 1 male of the goats, or 1 male for a sin offering. I'll say them in Hebrew just so that you can hear that they sound different. one male of the goats is useir izim echad, and one male for a sin offering is useir chatat echad. There's no mention of the izim, there's no mention of the goats. So the Gaon of Vilna, he notices this. And then he says, okay, this is all very nice and good. 3 times it says one phrase, 4 times it says the other. What is the significance of this? So he does what anybody who thinks about these things deeply does. He says, what happens if I add the number of oxen in the 3 days in which it mentions one male of the goats? So what days are these on? The first day, the second day, and the 4th day. On the first day you bring 13 oxen, on the second day is 12 oxen, and on the 4th day you bring 10 oxen. So how much is that altogether? 13 plus 12 is 25, plus 10 equals 35. Now, what about, well, I don't have to tell you what the other 4 days are going to be equal to. Because obviously if these 3 equal 35, then the 11th day, the 11th day, the 3rd day, the 5th day, 6th day, and 7th day also have to equal 35, because altogether there are 70 oxen. So what do we have here? We have the 70 divided in the only way you can divide these numbers, 7 through 13, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's only one way that you can divide them, so that you divide them equally, 35 and 35. So again, 7 plus 8 plus 9 plus 10 plus 11 plus 12 plus 13 is equal to 70. Those are the total 70 oxen. Why are there 70 oxen? Because they represent the 70 nations of the world. And the sages say, listen to this, they say in the Talmud, sorry, I misplaced this quote, that if the nations of the world knew how important these sacrifices are for them, I can't find the quote right now, then they would pray for the rebuilding of the temple, because it says that this is what atones for them. There's nothing else that atones for them. These were the specific sacrifices brought for the nations of the world, for the 70 nations. So now, again, we have 35 and 35. They're divided between the 2 phrases, a male of the goats and one male for a sin offering. Says the Gaon of Vilna, why are they divided into 35 and 35? Because apart from the 70 nations, there are also 2 heads of the nations. There are actually 72 nations, not 70. The 2 that are extra are the leaders of these 70 nations. Who are they? Not very hard to guess. Ishmael and Esau. Ishmael and Esau. Ishmael is and represents Islam. And Esau represents Christianity. So he says, in general, the world is divided between these 2 nations. Except for, of course, the Chinese. We'll have to talk about the Chinese some other time. But they're like somehow outside of this whole story. We don't know at the moment where to put them. But the nations of the world, the classic world, were divided between the Muslims and between the Christians. So he says that's why they're divided like this. Now, who would you say belongs to one male of the goats? Is that Ishmael or Esau? And what about the other one? One male for a sin offering. Who is that about? So it's not too hard to guess. One male of the goats, we'll do the harder one first. One male of the goats refers to Ishmael. Why? Because Ishmael is considered to be like a goat. The word for goat in Hebrew is, which means az panim. He is bold, or as the angel said to him, said to his mother a few times. Let me read to you the verses. He shall be a brazen man. His hand will fight against everyone, and everyone's hand will fight against him. He shall dwell alongside all of his kinsmen. This is Genesis 16:12. So one male of the goats are the nations that belong to Esau. To Ishmael, sorry. And the other phrase, you can't miss it, one male for a sin offering. What is Christianity obsessed over? Constantly, they can't get over this. Is sin. And it has to be a sin offering. This is something very, very deep in the psychology of both religions. That Islam is associated with brazen boldness. And Christianity is associated with sin in one way or another. Whether they call it original sin, they want to get rid of the sin, they're all about confession, they're living their lives all entrenched in sin, can't get away from it. Always thinking about it. Of course, a Jew is neither. He's bold sometimes, but he also doesn't think so much about sin. Jews don't think about sin. Why do we not think about sin? Why are we not obsessed over it? Because every day we say, forgive us for all our iniquities. And how do we say it? We say it in a blessing. And when you say it in a blessing, you can't say a blessing if the blessing is not true, that God forgives you. So we know that God forgives us every single day. How does He forgive us? He forgives us in the time of the temple. It was the two daily sacrifices that we talked about yesterday. And in our times, since we don't have the temple, we don't have these sacrifices, through the prayer and these blessings that we say. So a Jew is not obsessed over this. If he is, he's learned too much Christianity. He's too involved in Christianity, because he's not supposed to live with sin. There's no such thing in Judaism. You're supposed to do tshuva all the time, but tshuva is something else. Tshuva doesn't have to be for sin. And that we'll need to discuss some other time, but it's a very important concept. So here we have the seemingly very tedious, repetitive reading that yields this beautiful structure of both mathematically and in terms of the linguistic relationship to how you divide the world, the 70 nations of the world, between the 35 of Esau and the 35 of Ishmael. So I wish everybody Shabbat Shalom, and hope to see you on Sunday, God willing, with a new parsha.